So back in March, I believe it was, there was Trump versus Anderson, a Supreme Court ruling that was not necessarily given any particular justice because on most of it the nine justices agreed. However, there are parts in which they did not agree, and as such, there was a little bit of a concurring opinion where the liberals on the court didn't feel like the Supreme Court did its job in that they went further than they needed to do. But the most important thing here about Trump versus Anderson is it was a discussion and a statement of who is responsible for making sure that treasonous people, insurrectionists, people who either support the rebellion or whatever, or war against the United States, or support those people, uh, should not be in office. The wording of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is as follows: no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such a disability. Now, conservatives will argue, and I think it's a silly argument, that the President of the United States is not an officer of the United States. That's absurd. That's an absurd statement, and I mean, you should laugh at anybody who makes that suggestion because it's an absurd statement. Clearly, the president is the chief officer in charge of the executive branch. Clearly. And there are certain things that, require action on the part of Congress or on the part of other bodies, that in order to prove or say, yes, this person should be disqualified from whatever, or this person is no longer eligible to run for the office of presidency in particular. For example, there is something in the Constitution, the amendment that basically invoked term limits on the presidency, and you don't need any other action other than somebody has served 2 terms in office to deny somebody the ability to be on a ballot for President of the United States. You don't need to do anything. And a state would be within its rights, within its powers, I should say, because there's no such thing as states' rights. States don't have rights. People have rights. States have powers. States would have the authority to deny, for example, let's say Donald Trump lives throughout his entire term, and then there's another election in 2028, and let's say Donald Trump said, I want to be president again. Well, you can't run for office for more than 2 terms. But according to this ruling, states don't have the authority to actually, enforce federal law on eligibility. So will Donald Trump in 4 years try to run for office and cite Trump versus Anderson to say, hey, states don't have the authority to do it. It's only Congress that has the authority to enforce Section 3 of the Constitution, or to enforce those other sections of the Constitution as well. Right? And of course, an activist conservative Supreme Court may very well say, well, it's up to Congress to do that. And then Congress would have to be the ones that would prevent such a person from doing so. Of course, that's all absurd on its face, because clearly, if something is precisely true, as in Donald Trump will have then served 2 terms in elected office, was elected twice to presidency, to serve 2 full terms, obviously the states would not put him on a ballot, because obviously they have the authority to do so, because it is a true statement to say that he is not eligible because of serving 2 terms. Not eligible to run because he served 2 terms. So then why is this different for somebody being engaged in insurrection? The Section 3 of the Constitution does not require any sort of trial. it does not require any sort of, you know, fact-finding mission on the part of any other body. It doesn't say, it says Congress can remove the disability to run for any office of the United States if they feel like, you know, this person has made right or whatever, or maybe this person did participate but wasn't like a major person. There are people who were voted, but that Congress did vote a 2/3 majority in each house to say, hey, you can run for office again despite having done your thing. They didn't have to be found guilty of any crime. There's no requirement of any guilt to be asserted. It doesn't say if you're found guilty of insurrection. It's just if you did it. So if you participated in an insurrection, if you aided and abetted an insurrection or any such action against the government, you are automatically, boom, done, disqualified from being president of the United States. No ifs, ands, or buts, unless Congress moves to remove that inability. So, with January 6th coming along, last January 6th, at least after a presidential election on 2021, you had a situation where Donald Trump was begging Pence to not do anything, which is stupid. But I guess maybe he didn't realize, because at this point, the Trump versus Anderson hadn't been decided yet, because that was in 2024 and this is in 2021. Donald Trump is urging Pence to be the one to deny the counting of the Electoral College, send it back to the states, this, that, the other, whatever, knowing that if he didn't get it by the time, it was required to, then the House of Representatives would vote, and then the conservative House of Representatives, as you choose in the Constitution, would then elect Donald Trump president, even though he lost the Electoral College. But, again, according to this now Supreme Court ruling, Trump should have been asking Congress. He should have asked Congress to take the action, because Congress, the one has the authority under this Supreme Court ruling to determine whether or not somebody is eligible or not. When would Congress do that? Is Congress going to make a law for an individual person and say this person is found to have committed an act of insurrection against the United States, and as such, or aided and abetted the people who were committing an act of insurrection against the United States, and as such, you're not eligible to be president? No, it's not going to happen. Again, this is a self-actuating thing. It is something that is self-fulfilling. So by being one, he's not allowed to run, or shouldn't have been allowed to run. But according to the Supreme Court, saying that Congress is the one that has the authority to determine whether or not someone is eligible, the only time that Congress would have the ability to vote on somebody that is eligible or not would be the January 6th counting of the Electoral College ballots. Congress would then vote on the 6th whether or not to accept those Electoral College votes, and determine then if they're not valid, or if they are valid. And an Electoral College vote for somebody who's not qualified to be president of the United States because they committed an act of insurrection or supported the people that did, those are not validly cast Electoral College votes. So it's up to Congress. According to the Supreme Court ruling, it's up to Congress to take action. Will they? No. The Democrats might very well issue a challenge. I mean, it takes 20% now of each house to actually challenge the votes. But I don't think the Democrats would actually take that action, because I do question many of their spines in standing up to this president, and standing up to the Republicans in general. However, some will, but the majority of them I don't think will, because they probably would weigh the political issues with it versus the actual factual matter, which is that Donald Trump is not eligible to be president of the United States, yet he will probably be so anyway. But it's more on the Republicans. These moron Republicans who have backed Donald Trump, and the people who don't back Donald Trump didn't stay in Congress. They resigned because they figured, I'm not going to be able to win a campaign because I already stood up against Donald Trump, and the Trump voters won't support me. And as such, they will vote for somebody else in the primary, or they'll vote for somebody in general election. But the Republicans in the House, the Republicans in the Senate, have no spine whatsoever and will never stand up to Donald Trump. So even if it's factually correct that Donald Trump is not eligible to be president of the United States because of the 14th Amendment, Congress as a whole, and specifically the Republican Party or the Republican Party elected representatives in the House and the Senate, lack the spine to do the right thing. But of course, we, the people who, support democracy and freedom and support, not having a wannabe tyrant who wants to be dictator on day one in office and who will reject somebody who committed an act of insurrection or aided and abetted those who did. We don't want that person as president. We won't do what the violent domestic terrorists did on January 6th of 2021. We won't do it because we're not going to put other people at threat at risk because of this. That being said, Congress should show that it has a spine and it should reject the Electoral College votes of Donald Trump as being invalid because he can't serve as president because of his involvement with the insurrection 4 years ago. But they won't. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video if you agree with it, and of course, have a good day.